They celebrated my sister's success while I was still in a coma. That's when I knew my family had already buried me alive. The first thing I heard when I woke up wasn't the steady beep of hospital monitors or the gentle voice of a nurse checking my vitals. It was bass. Heavy, pounding bass that seemed to shake through the sterile walls of my private room at Desert Springs Medical Center in Scottsdale. At first, I thought I was dreaming or that my brain, still foggy from 8 weeks of unconsciousness, was playing tricks on me. But then came the laughter, loud and careless, echoing up through the ventilation system like some kind of cruel joke. I tried to move, to lift my hand or turn my head, but my body felt like it was encased in concrete. Every nerve ending screamed in protest. The accident had been brutal, a head-on collision on the I-10 that left my car wrapped around a highway divider. The doctors had told my family I might never wake up. When the nurse finally came in, her face went through a remarkable transformation. First shock, her eyes widening as she realized I was conscious. Then something that looked almost like embarrassment. She rushed to my side, checking my vitals, but I could see the discomfort in the way she avoided my eyes. My throat was so dry I could barely whisper, but I managed to croak out the question that mattered most. Where was my family? The nurse's hand stilled on the IV line. She glanced toward the corner of the room, where a sad bouquet of flowers had wilted to brown, their petals scattered across the windowsill. Next to them, a deflated balloon sagged against the wall. They came by at first, she said carefully. They were very worried those first few days. But then, well, life goes on. Her words hung in the air like a death sentence. At first, those 2 words contained the entire story of how quickly I had been forgotten. The music grew louder. I asked the nurse what was happening, and I watched her face carefully as she debated how much to tell me. Finally, she sighed. Your family rented out the hospital's event space. Your sister Brooke got accepted into some prestigious modeling and pageant training program. They're celebrating downstairs in the banquet hall. I let that sink in. While I had been lying in this bed for 8 weeks, fighting for every breath, my family had been planning a party for Brooke in the same building where I was fighting for my life. Something inside me crystallized in that moment. It wasn't hot anger. It was colder than that. Clearer, like ice forming over a deep lake. I told the nurse I wanted to go downstairs. She protested, of course, listing all the medical reasons why that was a terrible idea, but I insisted with a quiet intensity that must have frightened her, because she reluctantly agreed to help me. Getting out of bed was agony, but I refused the wheelchair. I needed to walk into that party on my own 2 feet, even if every step felt like walking on broken glass. So I held onto that IV pole and began the slow, shuffling journey down the hallway. The banquet hall had been transformed into something out of a magazine spread, with dramatic lighting and floral arrangements. At the center of it all was Brooke, looking perfect as always. Her long dark hair caught the light, her makeup flawless, her dress shimmering. She was holding court with a group of older women, her smile bright and practiced. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The effect was immediate. Conversation stopped, heads turned. I must have looked like something out of a horror movie, a gaunt figure in a hospital gown, hair matted, skin pale as death, clutching an IV pole. The contrast between my appearance and the polished glamour of the party was stark. My father saw me first. Richard Chen, successful real estate developer, was talking to the mayor when his eyes landed on me. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession, but not the joyful kind you might expect when your daughter wakes from a coma. He strode toward me, leaned close to the nurse, his voice low but sharp. Who authorized this? Who gave you permission to bring her down here? She's going to ruin everything. Get her out of here before anyone else sees. My mother appeared next, gliding across the floor in a designer dress. Cynthia Chen didn't even pretend to be happy to see me awake. Her eyes swept over me like I was a stain on her expensive carpet. Oh God, she muttered. This is exactly what we don't need right now. Get her out of here. This is Brooke's night. In a voice meant for me to hear, she added, I don't know why you couldn't have waited one more day to wake up. Always so selfish. We've already told everyone you're not part of this family anymore. Around us, guests started to notice the commotion. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Camera phones emerged. My mother's expression hardened. Then Brooke made her move. She approached with that perfect smile, raising her champagne glass in a mock toast. Oh, look everyone, she announced. The ghost of failure has returned. How touching. She tilted her head, studying me. You know, Mian, I was going to send flowers to your room, but Mother said it would be a waste of money since you probably wouldn't wake up anyway. She laughed, and several guests laughed along with her. But here you are, proving us all wrong. How inconvenient. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Couldn't stand not being the center of attention for one night, could you? Even unconscious, you found a way to try and steal my spotlight. Pathetic. These people are here for me. I'm the daughter they're proud of. I'm the one with a future. You're just the mistake they keep around out of obligation. My mother nodded in agreement. Brooke's right. We've been nothing but patient with you, Mian. We paid for this expensive hospital, this private room, and this is how you repay us? My father actually reached out and gave my IV pole a small shove, not hard enough to knock me over but enough to make me stumble. The casual violence of the gesture was somehow more devastating than if he had struck me. I stood there, looking from face to face. My father, looking at me with undisguised annoyance. My mother, her eyes filled with something approaching hatred. And Brooke, basking in what she clearly saw as her ultimate victory. The nurse gently took my arm, trying to guide me back toward the door. I let her lead me away, but not before I took one last long look at that room. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just looked, committing every face to memory. Back in my room, the nurse settled me into bed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never should have taken you down there." But I was grateful she had, because now I knew. I had woken up with some small hope that my family would care that I survived. Instead, I had woken up to the truth, delivered with brutal clarity. They had already erased me from their lives. My continued existence was nothing but an inconvenience to them. As I lay there in the dark, listening to the faint sounds of the party below, something shifted inside me. The scared girl who had spent her whole life trying to earn her family's love was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who saw clearly, someone who understood that she owed them nothing. Someone who was going to make them pay. The physical recovery took months. Physical therapy was grueling, each session pushing my body to limits I didn't think I could reach. But every painful step, every weight I lifted, I did it with a purpose. This is for Richard, I'd think. This is for Cynthia. And this one is for Brooke. When I was released from the hospital, my parents picked me up in complete silence. They didn't ask how I was feeling. They simply drove, as if they were picking up a package they didn't want. The house looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything had changed. Every single photograph of me had been removed from the walls. In their place were dozens of photos of Brooke at pageants, on runways, with celebrities. I had been erased and replaced. Dinner that night was my first real introduction to what my life was going to be like. Brooke dominated the conversation with updates about her pageant preparation. "The state pageant is in 3 months," she said. "I've hired the best coach in Arizona. I'm doing 4 hours of training every day." My father nodded. "We're going all in on this. Brooke is our investment, our golden ticket. This family's future depends on Brooke succeeding." He looked at me. "We can't afford any distractions." My mother set down her wine glass. "You know, we should use Miyun's situation to our advantage. The whole tragic accident, the coma, Brooke staying strong despite the family trauma. We can frame it as Brooke overcoming adversity. The judges eat that kind of story up." Brooke's face lit up. "That's brilliant, Mother. We can have Miyon in the audience, looking supportive but still kind of sickly. Really play up the family crisis angle." I sat there, processing what I was hearing. They wanted to use my suffering as a prop in Brooke's pageant story, not because they cared, but because it could earn sympathy votes. That night, alone in my room, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry about this. I was going to destroy them, methodically and completely, using the very weapons they had taught me to wield. They valued appearances above all else, their reputation, their standing in society. So that's what I would take from them. I started with social media. I created an anonymous account and began excavating Brooke's digital past. I went back years, searching through her Instagram, Facebook, old Twitter accounts. What I found was illuminating. Old photos from high school parties where she was clearly drunk, comments where she had been cruel and petty, screenshots of group chats where she had spread rumors. Nothing illegal, but plenty that would clash with the wholesome image she was projecting. But I needed more than embarrassing photos. I needed something concrete. So I started visiting places Brooke used to frequent. There was a coffee shop in Old Town Scottsdale called The Daily Grind, where I found Maya. She had been in Brooke's social circle, one of those periphery friends never quite accepted into the inner circle. We had been friendly once, before Brooke made it clear that being friends with me was social suicide. After a few carefully placed questions, Maya's expression hardened. "You want to know the truth about your sister?" she asked. "She's not the person she pretends to be." Over the next hour, Maya told me everything. The charity project that Brooke was taking credit for, Steps to School, had been Maya's idea from the beginning. Maya had developed the concept, reached out to sponsors, organized everything. Until Brooke went to the faculty advisor and presented the entire plan as her own work. When Maya tried to protest, Brooke had threatened her with fabricated evidence. So Maya had backed down and watched as Brooke accepted awards for work Maya had done. Then Maya told me about Jenna, a girl who was Brooke's main competition in the state pageant the previous year. 2 weeks before the finals, anonymous accounts posted fabricated screenshots showing Jenna had cheated at school. Jenna was forced to withdraw. By the time she proved the screenshots were fake, it was too late. Brooke had won by default. The most damning revelation was about Derek Lansing, a board member at the pageant organization. Maya had noticed he was spending unusual amounts of time with Brooke, private coaching sessions, dinners that looked more like dates. Maya had screenshots of text messages between them that were unprofessional. and she had noticed that Brooke's interview performances had been suspiciously perfect, as if she had known the questions in advance. I left that coffee shop with a folder full of information Maya had been keeping for years, waiting for someone to care enough to do something with it. Now she did. She had me. Over the next weeks, I became a ghost in my own house, observing and planning. I watched as Brooke practiced, listened as she did interview prep, sat quietly during family strategy sessions. They talked about me once, suggesting I publicly forgive them for a touching reconciliation story. My father laughed and said to keep me in the background. We want sympathy but not competition. I smiled and nodded and agreed to everything. And all the while, I was putting the final pieces into place. I reached out to Jenna, who is now working as a freelance journalist. She was more than happy to investigate a story about pageant corruption when I provided her with evidence. I also contacted other girls who had competed against Brooke, compiled a timeline of every incident, every stolen idea, every rumor she had spread. And then I waited. The night of the Miss Arizona Sunstone State pageant arrived. The Phoenix Convention Center had been transformed into a glittering temple. My family arrived like royalty. My father glad-handed everyone. My mother floated through the crowd, and Brooke, magnificent in a silver gown, held court with the confidence of someone who believed victory was assured. I sat alone in the back row, wearing a simple black dress. Maya sat next to me, nervous but resolute. In her purse was every piece of evidence we had gathered. We had gone over the plan a dozen times. Now all we had to do was wait. The pageant began with all the expected pageantry. Brooke performed beautifully in every segment. After each round, contestants were eliminated until only the top 5 remained. Brooke was one of them, standing center stage with a smile of triumph. In the front row, my parents leaned forward, ready to capture the moment of victory. The interview portion began. The first 3 girls fielded their questions admirably. The 4th girl stumbled slightly but recovered. Then it was Brooke's turn. She stepped up to the microphone, poised and perfect. The head judge smiled, but there was something in her expression. Earlier that day, this judge had received an anonymous email from me, planting seeds of doubt about Brooke's application. Miss Chen, the judge began, compassion and integrity are core values we look for. Your application highlights your work with the Steps to School charity. Could you tell us more specifically about how you developed this program and what your role was? I saw the momentary flash of panic in Brooke's eyes. She launched into her prepared response, talking in general terms about helping children, recognizing community needs, all things technically true but saying nothing specific about her actual contribution. Before she could finish, Maya stood up. The movement drew everyone's attention. That's a lie, she said, her voice carrying across the auditorium. That project was mine. I developed it, I organized it, and she stole it. She took my work and claimed it as her own. The auditorium erupted. Security started moving toward Maya, but she held her ground, pulling papers from her folder. I have emails. I have the original project proposal with my name on it. I have witness statements. On stage, Brooke had gone pale. Before she could respond, Jenna stood up from the press section. Miss Chen, she said calmly, I'm Jenna Morrison with the Arizona Republic. Would you care to comment on allegations that you orchestrated a smear campaign against me during last year's competition? I have evidence suggesting you created fake accounts to spread false information, resulting in my withdrawal from the pageant. She held up her phone with screenshots, timestamps, IP addresses. She had built an airtight case. The judges immediately went into emergency consultation. The host tried to restore order, but it was impossible. The audience was recording everything. Sponsors looked horrified. My mother tried to get to Maya, but security blocked her. My father was on his phone, probably calling his lawyer. And Brooke stood frozen on stage, her mouth opening and closing but no words coming out. The head judge returned to the microphone, her expression grave. In light of these serious allegations, we have no choice but to suspend Miss Brooke Chen's participation pending a full investigation. She is disqualified from tonight's proceedings and any future pageant activities under our organization. Disqualified, in front of hundreds of people, in front of cameras and journalists. The crown my parents had spent tens of thousands of dollars chasing had just evaporated. Security escorted Brooke off the stage. She was crying, her perfect makeup running, her hair coming undone. She looked toward our parents, but they couldn't help her. They were surrounded by reporters. Maya and I slipped out quietly during the chaos. No one noticed us leave. We walked out into the cool Phoenix evening, the sounds of shouting fading behind us. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Thank you for this. Justice has been served. Another from one of the other girls Brooke had wronged. Finally, she got what she deserved. Maya turned to me. How do you feel? I took a moment to assess. I felt lighter, like I had been carrying an enormous weight and had finally set it down. I feel like I can breathe again, I told her. We went to a small diner and talked about what would happen next. The story would break by morning. Multiple news outlets would pick it up, not just because of the pageant scandal, but because of my family's prominence. Richard Chen couldn't keep his own house in order. It was the kind of story that would spread like wildfire. But more than that, the investigation would uncover even more. Once people started looking closely, once other victims felt safe coming forward, the full extent of Brooke's deception would become clear. Her reputation was destroyed, and by extension, so was the family's. Maya and I had already discussed my next steps. She had a 2-bedroom apartment near ASU with a room available. I had some money saved and my hospital settlement from the accident. It was enough to be independent. I had also been accepted to Arizona State University for the fall semester, deferred from the previous year because of my accident. In 3 months, I would start classes in psychology. When Maya dropped me off at the house, all the lights were on. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains, hear raised voices. They were home, waiting for me. I sat in Maya's car for a moment. "You don't have to go in there," Maya said. "You can come home with me right now." I shook my head. "I need to face them once more. I need them to see me when I tell them I'm done." The front door opened before I could knock. My father stood there, his face purple with rage. Behind him, my mother was pacing frantically, and Brooke was curled up on the couch, still in her pageant gown, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Richard grabbed my arm and pulled me inside. "What did you do?" he shouted. "What the hell did you do to your sister?" I didn't flinch. I looked him directly in the eye. I told the truth. That's all. I just made sure the truth came out. Cynthia advanced on me with clenched fists. "You vindictive little bitch. You couldn't stand seeing Brooke succeed. You had to ruin everything because you're jealous." From the couch, Brooke wailed. "Why do you hate me, Mion? I never did anything to you." The sheer audacity of that statement was almost funny. "You never did anything to me?" I repeated quietly. "You celebrated your success while I was in a coma. You called me the ghost of failure at your party. You stole from people, lied about people, destroyed lives to get ahead, and you think you never did anything wrong?" My father raised his hand, and for a moment I thought he would hit me. But I didn't move, didn't blink, and something in my expression made him lower it. "You're going to fix this. You're going to tell those judges and reporters it was all a misunderstanding." "No," I said. The word was simple, final. "I'm not going to lie for you anymore. I'm not going to pretend we're a happy family. I'm not going to sacrifice myself so Brooke can have everything. I'm done." My mother laughed harshly. "You're done? You don't get to be done. You live under our roof. We pay for everything." I pulled out my phone and showed them my bank account with the settlement money. "I also have this," I said, pulling out a folder with copies of text messages, emails, recordings of family conversations, documentation of every cruel thing they said about me in the hospital. Evidence of their neglect, their emotional abuse. I'm 18 years old, legally an adult. I don't need your permission to leave, and I don't need your money. I'm moving out tonight. And if you try to retaliate, if you try to interfere with my life in any way, all of this goes public." The room fell silent. They stared at me like they had never seen me before. My father put a hand on my mother's arm to stop her from speaking. He'd always been the more calculating one, and he could see that threatening me would only make things worse. "Get out," he said finally, his voice cold. "If you're going to betray this family, then you're no daughter of mine. Take your things and leave. Don't ever come back." "I'm not betraying this family," I said quietly. "This family betrayed me a long time ago. I'm just the first one honest enough to admit it." I went upstairs and quickly packed a bag with essentials. When I came back downstairs, they were exactly where I had left them, frozen. I walked past them without another word and out the front door, where Maya was still waiting. As we drove away, I looked back at that house one final time. It was a beautiful house, expensive and impressive, the kind that looked perfect from the outside, but I knew the rot that lived inside it. They would probably recover eventually, people like my parents always did, but it wouldn't matter because I wouldn't be there to see it. The next few months were a strange kind of freedom. I moved into Maya's apartment and slowly built a life that was entirely my own. I continued physical therapy, not out of anger now, but out of genuine desire to be strong. I got a part-time job at a bookstore. I made new friends who knew nothing about my family, who liked me for who I was. The story of Brooke's downfall spread through Scottsdale society exactly as predicted. Local news covered it, bloggers had a field day, and other victims came forward with their own stories. The pageant organization banned her from ever competing again. The modeling program rescinded their offer. Every door that had been opened to her slammed shut. My parents tried damage control, but their reputation had taken a serious hit. Several business deals fell through. My mother was asked to step down from charity boards. They lost friends, lost status, lost the social standing they had worked so hard to build. About 4 months after I moved out, I received an unexpected package from Jenna. Her article about the pageant scandal had been picked up by major outlets and launched her career. The package contained a check, a portion of her advance for a book deal about pageant culture. The money was substantial enough to cover a full year of tuition. When fall semester started, I threw myself into psychology studies. I was drawn particularly to courses about family systems, trauma recovery, and resilience. I also started volunteering at a youth center that worked with teenagers from difficult family situations. I saw myself in so many of them, and I wanted to be the person I had needed at their age. A year after I left home, I received a call from my father's attorney. My parents wanted to discuss reconciliation. They were willing to offer financial support if I would agree to attend family therapy and work toward rebuilding our relationship. I asked a single question: did they ask you to apologize on their behalf? The attorney admitted no, they had not. Then my answer is no, I said. Please tell my parents I'm not interested in their money or their version of reconciliation. If they want a relationship with me, they can start by acknowledging what they did, apologizing sincerely, and demonstrating through their actions over time that they've changed. There was no response from my parents after I declined. It was as if I had ceased to exist for them all over again. And surprisingly, that was okay with me. I had spent so many years desperate for their love. Now I understood that what they offered wasn't love at all. It was control. 2 years after leaving home, I was thriving. I had a 3.9 gigapascals and had been accepted into an honors program. I had been promoted at the youth center. I had friends who genuinely cared about me. I had even started dating someone who treated me with kindness and respect. One evening in spring, almost 3 years after leaving, I was studying in a coffee shop when someone sat down across from me. I looked up and found myself staring at Cynthia. My mother looked older, more worn. Her usual impeccable appearance was slightly disheveled. We stared at each other in silence. Finally, she spoke. I wanted to see you. Your father doesn't know I'm here. She twisted her hands in her lap. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how we treated you. I'm sorry for not being the mother you needed. I'm sorry for all of it. I studied her face. Have you been in therapy? I asked. She nodded. For about 6 months now. After everything that happened, I started having panic attacks. She smiled bitterly. My therapist says we built our family on image rather than substance, on competition rather than support. We created an environment where one daughter had to fail so the other could succeed. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you deserve to know, and because I wanted you to hear me say that you were right. About all of it. She pulled out an envelope. This is a letter I wrote in therapy. It details everything I did wrong. It's part of my amends process. You don't have to read it. You don't owe me forgiveness or anything at all. I just wanted you to have it. I looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it. What do you want from me? Nothing, she said, and I believed her. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what we did to you, and I see who you've become in spite of us. You're stronger than I ever was, braver than I could have imagined. And I'm so very sorry I wasn't the mother who could appreciate that when it mattered. She stood up to leave. Before she could go, I spoke. Cynthia. It was the first time I had called her by her first name. What happened to this family? To Brooke? That wasn't my fault. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending that broken things were whole. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I know that now. Take care of yourself, Mian. You deserve every good thing that comes to you. After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope. Eventually, I put it in my bag, unopened. Maybe I would read it someday. Maybe I wouldn't. The important thing was that I had a choice. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had happened since that terrible day in the hospital. I thought about the pain, the anger, the meticulous planning of my revenge, and the complicated aftermath. People might judge what I did, might say I went too far, but I knew the truth. Sometimes you had to fight back. Sometimes you had to demand justice. Sometimes the only way to heal was to make sure the people who hurt you couldn't keep hurting others. I had taken back my power in the only way available to me. I had used the truth as my weapon. Brooke had built her success on lies and cruelty. My parents had enabled that behavior. And when it all came crashing down, when the facade cracked, that wasn't my fault. That was theirs. The thing they never understood was that I hadn't destroyed them out of hatred. I had exposed them out of love. Love for myself, yes, but also for every person they might have hurt in the future. I had stopped a cycle, drawn a line, said with my actions that this kind of behavior was unacceptable. And now, lying in my comfortable bed in my chosen home with my chosen family, I felt something I had never felt in that big house in Paradise Valley. I felt peace. Not the fragile peace of someone hiding from conflict, but the solid peace of someone who had walked through fire and emerged intact. They had called me the ghost of failure, meant as an insult to diminish and destroy. But ghosts have power. Ghosts remind the living of their sins. Ghosts don't let the past stay buried. And this ghost, this girl they tried to erase, had come back from the edge of death stronger than they could have imagined. I had turned their weapon against them, used their worst moment to find my best self, and in doing so, I had finally become free. My revenge hadn't just been about punishing the people who hurt me. It had been about changing a pattern, about showing that victims could become survivors, and survivors could become fighters, and fighters could win. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I felt certainty settle deep in my bones. I had made the right choice, not just in exposing Brooke, but in leaving, in building a new life, in refusing to accept anything less than respect and dignity. They had tried to bury me, to make me disappear, to turn me into a ghost haunting the margins of their perfect family, but I had refused to disappear. Instead, I had transformed into something they never expected, not a ghost of failure, but a phoenix rising from the ashes of their cruelty. They had celebrated while I lay dying, but in the end, I was the one who survived. I was the one who thrived. I was the one who built something real and lasting out of the ruins they created. I was free. I was whole. I was finally, completely, undeniably alive. And nothing they had done, nothing they could ever do, would take that away from me again.